I was crying when there's like the 4 dragon handler people and they're literally all holding sticks.
Oh my god, yes, that's what I wrote down. I was like, what the hell are these sticks for? And what is the point of them? They were like sitting there and I was like, he's not like a fucking marshmallow. That stick is not going to protect you from his flame. Hi everyone! Welcome back to the Books on Fantasy podcast. We, Addison and Ryan, are two best friends who love to explore the world of fantasy through books, shows, and movies, but with a heavy emphasis on books. Today we are covering House of the Dragon Season 2, Episode 6. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a new dragon writer! That was so exciting, and I'm pumped that it was Adam that got Seasmoke. And I also thought it was funny that Seasmoke was like, his friend must have. And like, ain't no telling him who to pick.
I have a lot of thoughts about Seasmoke. Oh my god. Okay, so I have a lot of thoughts about Seasmoke as a dragon, mainly that he is mischievous as fuck. Although I will say, I felt like he and Adam's energies match. When I saw them together, I was like, this just really makes sense to me for whatever reason. I am very, very, very excited for the next episode. In the teaser for the next episode, you see Adam and Rhaenyra on the beach, and she's like, "You have taken a dragon from House Targaryen. What is your intention?" And I'm just like pumped for that interaction.
I have a feeling that Adam's going to join Rhaenyra's cause.
Oh yeah, how can he not?
But I also think it's funny that she's like, "You took him," but it's like, no, Seasmoke just made this decision of his own accord. Like, he's like, I don't like your pick. I'm going to find someone else.
Yeah, no, I don't think that anyone can take a dragon except for Aemond. He can take a dragon.
I guess so.
Well, it's just so funny because Rhaenyra's whole thing is dragons choose the writer. They're so choosy. She really emphasizes that they're basically ancient Valyrian gods. And then she's like, Adam, you took the dragon. Like, I don't think anybody takes a dragon. You know?
Right. Don't put this on Adam.
Like, don't come for me.
He was just trying to get some clams on the beach.
I want to get taken by a dragon while I get some clams on the beach.
So maybe not a perfect day.
Maybe not Seasmoke. I don't trust him at all. After Sir Stefflin Darkland, no. Okay, we'll talk about.
He reminds me of Daemon as a dragon. You know, kind of.
That is so accurate.
But anyways, before we get started today, we would like to remind everyone that this is an adult podcast where we will have explicit conversations. Explicit language may be used, and triggering events may be discussed. So please adjust accordingly. Housekeeping. We are continuing our new reader Throne of Glass deep dives. If you are looking for a fantasy book series to start, then so far we can't recommend the Throne of Glass series enough. Also, if you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe. That way you'll always be up to date when new episodes drop. That is all for housekeeping. So this is what you can expect from today's House of the Dragon episode. First, we will start with the State of the Realm, where we recap key events. Next, we will hold a meeting with the Small Council to analyze key events and conversations. After that, we will continue with our trial in the Fantasy Court of Law to decide which team has enough evidence to support their claim to the Iron Throne. And last but not least, we will also share our favorite moments from the episode. And without further ado, Addison, please update us with the State of the Realm for our episode summary.
Okay, and just a fair warning to everyone, I was feeling spicy when I wrote this, so it's going to be a spicy recap. Watch me say that and everyone's going to be like, that was totally normal. There was nothing exciting about that. Please don't preface that again unless it's true. All right. Here we go. Guess who's back? Back again? Jason Lannister. As always, he's arrogant and obnoxious. He and his host of men arrive at the Tooth and send word to Aemond that they will march when he and Vhagar accompany them. Aemond, who loves being told what to do, reacts badly to this request and commands Tylan to tell his brother to get his ass in gear and get to Harrenhal to defeat Daemon before he can rally the River Lords. He also commands the council to form an alliance with the Triarchy to end the blockade at the Gullet. Everyone says this is a bad idea, but Aemond doesn't give a shit. Oh, and he fires his mom from the small council. Harsh. It's Corlys' first small council meeting in his new official position as Hand of the Queen, and boy, it's a doozy. Rhaenyra asks Sir Steffan Darkland to attempt to bond a dragon because of the Targaryen blood from his great, well, whatever, you get it, grandmother. He says yes. Gee, what could go wrong? Cue Addison's long, exasperated sigh. Yet another one of Daemon's unhinged hallucinations. This time, he relives the day Aemon, her son, died, and Viserys' angry response after learning that Daemon called Viserys' dead son the heir for a day. Daemon tries to leave the hallucination, just like we all wish we could, but the door doesn't open until Sir Simon, who is based in reality, does. Daemon, who quite literally is losing it, holds a knife to Sir Simon's throat and accuses him of toying with Daemon's peace.
Not Sir Simon.
I know. I was like, you better not.
Don't touch that man.
I know. That man is an angel from heaven, okay? Don't even think about it. Don't you dare. Woo! That almost turned me Team Green. I'm just saying. There are some things that are unforgivable. Even Daemon is sick of these scenes and decides to pack up and head out of this god's-forsaken castle, but is stopped on his way out by Alis. The two have a conversation about the burden of the crown, and Daemon Targaryen actually asks someone for help. Counsel. It's time for Sir Steffan Darkland, or should I say Sparklin? Get it?
No.
Oops. Like the 4th of July in there. Whew. All right. To make his bid for Seasmoke. It goes badly, to say the least. Is anyone actually surprised by this? It seems like Daemon isn't the only one on edge. Alan doesn't want to be Corlys' first mate. Ulf is pissed when he overhears Madame Sylvie spilling the beans about the dancing and feasting going on in the Red Keep, and Rhaenyra slaps the shit out of Lord Bartimos. Things aren't any better for the small folk in King's Landing. There's no food, and what little there is all fish, and even that is running out, as Hugh's wife discovers. Lyris updates Aemon on the worsening conditions, and Aemon's response is, so? Bring back Aegon the Magnanimous! Lyris makes a play to be named Aemon's Hand and instead gets called a toad and told to fetch Otto Hightower. Top 5 moment. Seriously. They are interrupted when Maester Orwell shares the good news that Aegon is conscious. Aemon pays Aegon a little visit and basically threatens to kill him if he talks. Meanwhile, we check in on Rhaena and little Aegon and Viserys. Rhaena learns that there is a wild dragon in the Vale. Gee, I wonder if she will try and bond that one. Back in King's Landing, Alicent has a series of conversations that honestly are all kind of devastating. As she sits vigilant at Aegon's side, Maester Orwell updates her on Aegon's condition and informs her that her father has yet to respond to any of her ravens. And House Beesbury has raised arms against the Hightower host in retribution for their lord. Rip Lord Beezy.
I kind of like Beezy. You should
Beezy. Rip Lord Beezy. Ayo Beezy. I kind of like that too. Beezy, my guy. You can probably do the editing for this, so do what you wish. Okay. Rip Lord Beesbury, or Beezy if you're going with his gangster name. If you know, you know. Alicent then goes to bid farewell to Gwaine as he rides out with Cole for Harrenhal. They have a brief but sad conversation about what her third son Daeron is like. Most notably that he is kind, a quality his brothers severely lack. Last but certainly not least, we at the Booked on Fantasy podcast are on Helena alert. Why does the cricket not sing for her anymore? Alicent asks Helena if she wants to go to the Sept and light a candle for all their lost souls, leaving me to wonder if Alicent just might light a candle for herself too. We immediately go back to King's Landing where Rhaenyra's mysterious gift is finally revealed. Dozens of ships carrying food that the small folk so desperately need. We get one more level of Luigi's mansion with Daemon. He holds and comforts a weeping Viserys as he cries over the body of his dead wife, Aemma. And when he is snapped back into reality by Sir Simon, he informs him that Sir Grover Tully is dead, and even Alice couldn't help him. Could that shifting wind be from Hurricane Alice? Back in King's Landing, it's absolute chaos. People are running and fighting over the bounty of food Rhaenyra's ships delivered to the shores of King's Landing. We focus on Hugh. Hey, why does that guy keep coming up? Could it have anything to do with his Targaryen blonde hair? Anyways, we get to see Cheese's dog again, and he is okay, thank God. Hugh notices the people running and demands to know where they got the food, and instead of going to get some for himself, he punches the guy in the face for a bag of carrots. Because of the mounting tensions, the Kingsguard immediately tells Alicent and Helena they need to leave now. When they exit onto the streets, all hell has broken loose. The queens flee for their lives and barely make it to their whalehouse, but not before Alicent, the queen of fishes, takes a nasty rotten fish to the face. And the Red Keep, Larys gives an Oscar-worthy monologue to Aegon about what his future is to be, and somehow I came out of that conversation feeling bad for Larys. So yeah, he deserves the Oscar. In Driftmark, Seasmoke, the most mischievous boy, chases down Adam for literally no reason. To no one's surprise, Adam cannot outrun a fucking dragon. The two come face to face. For what reason, only time will tell. Except they reveal in the scenes for the next episode, and Adam is Seasmoke's new rider. We come to our final scene of the episode. Mysaria updates Rhaenyra on how their gift, quote unquote, was received, and Mysaria shares the story of her horrific trauma she suffered as a child. Rhaenyra's response is to kiss her. Okay, yeah, I've thoughts about that. But they are interrupted when a member of the Kingsguard informs Rhaenyra that Seasmoke has been spotted. But this time, he is not alone. He is with his new rider.
Gotta catch 'em all, said Seasmoke.
I know. Also, sorry that was so long, but just so you guys know, I think that is quite literally the longest episode of the season thus far, and there were a lot of scenes. So I don't want to skip over anything because I think this episode is really a culmination of all these pieces starting to come together, right? Because we've had so many new characters introduced and you see very brief scenes of them and you're like, why do I care about them? Why is this important? And now they're starting to bring all the pieces together. So we're having to visit all of these characters and it really expands the universe. So when, I'm writing these, I don't want to overlook anything because, well, they all end up being more important as we see. Because remember the first episode, we were like, who the fuck is Adam and Alan of Hull and why do we care about them? And now we know. So
yes. I really felt like the last couple episodes have been Team Black finally making more significant moves. Because I think prior to this, the first half of the season was a lot about what Team Green was doing. And Team Black was kind of laying low. Rhaenyra doesn't quite know what to do, et cetera, et cetera. But finally, we're starting to see Rhaenyra and her council and her schemes with Mysaria and stuff. It's all panning out.
Yeah, it's really all starting to come together, which, I mean, makes sense because there's only 2 episodes left of the season. We only have 2 more weeks. So they got to start bringing it together.
Oh, I know. I wonder how this season is going to end. If there's going to be another battle or if there's going to be...
Oh, there has to be, right? My best prediction would be that we're finally going to see some kind of action at Harrenhal. I mean, they've been building that up all season.
Yeah.
So I would be really surprised if we don't see that. I do feel that, I mean, it's House of Dragon, Game of Thrones. A major character has to die. Something really big has to happen in the finale. My money is going to be on Baela or Jace or... No, I don't think anyone from Team Green's going to bite the dust. Not yet. So I think it's going to be Baela or Jace.
Okay.
I mean, those are the
I have no idea.
Those are the only main / side characters that would be devastating and impact the characters a lot, but wouldn't swing the war. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, if we lose Daemon, oh my gosh, really big deal. If we lose Rhaenyra, I mean, really big deal. If we lose Aegon or Aemond, also big deal. And they're all, to me, too big a key players to go out this early. So it feels like a Jace or Baela, like someone we care about who is important to the war effort, but is not going to necessarily turn the tide, so to speak.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
That's what I think.
I
know.
I guess we'll see.
In 2 weeks.
All right. Well, thank you for that update. There are obviously a lot of things to discuss, so to the small council we go.
Okay, so before we do our tapestry progression and our episode title analysis, I did have one overarching comment to make about this episode and really this season in general. So that is that overall for this episode, I actually really liked it. I think for this episode, I had the most favorite moments I've ever had for an episode because there were just a lot of great moments. But I do feel that it's really starting to feel very repetitive and redundant. And to me, this is a commentary on the whole season. This is problematic because there's only 8 episodes. And 8 episodes is nothing. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, that's a very, very short season. For example, the repetition of Damon's hallucinations. I mean, that's literally been every episode, multiple scenes. That's all he's doing. He's just over there falling asleep in random places and then hallucinating and then waking up. And Sir Simon's like, hey, did you want to, do something, Your Grace? Like here's the update on the realm. And then basically every scene with Rhaenyra is just her freaking constant complaining about how she can't do anything. And she's like, I'm tired of being protected, and all of that is fine. Those storylines are interesting and they seem necessary for the development of the characters. But for it to be every single freaking episode with no development, this is especially disappointing when we're talking about a show that takes 2-year time gaps between each season. So it's like what little time you have, you're wasting it giving us the same scenes over and over again. And this is not meant to be a commentary on the actors. They're doing a great job. They're working with the script they're given. And the script's not even bad. I just feel like it could have been better utilized. Our time could have been spent on something else or some other kind of development.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm curious about how the book progresses things versus how the show does. Because obviously the show adapts and makes changes from the original text of the book. But yeah, I agree that there's many cyclical and repeated ideas and situations for characters that I think at this point, it's like, okay, we've seen this, 4 times now? I was okay with 2. And then we could have
moved on. Well, to me, it almost feels like because Rhaenyra and Daemon are main actors, because in reality, the 3 absolute top tier in terms of priority of actors is Alicent, Rhaenyra, and Daemon, right? And it almost feels like their contracts had specific requirements on how many minutes of screen time they were supposed to get. And so they were like, there's so much else going on with Ulf and Hugh and Adam and Alan and Jace and Bela and everybody. But they were like, oh shit, we need to add a few more minutes of Rhaenyra. Let's have another scene of her complaining. It feels like they're just trying to fill the time with those characters. But I don't need to see that again and
That's
again
true.
and again.
Yeah.
Because there's so many elements of this season that are just so great. And it's just like, why are we going all in on these themes? I don't know. I was spicy when I was writing all my notes, so they may come off a little bitter. But anyway, so we're going to move on to the tapestry progression. So I had a thought that I thought was really interesting. And when I had it, I was like, whoa. And I was so excited. And it occurred to me that maybe this is extremely obvious to everyone. So if this is the thought that everyone already had, please don't make fun of me. Just pretend to be excited and awed by my revelation. I think that the tapestry is connected to Helaena. Remember in the very first episode that she's sitting there and she's embroidering the blanket? And in season 1, there's several scenes of her embroidering as well. Like we know that's one of her beloved hobbies. And she's often seen doing that. And that in conjunction with her prophetic tendencies makes the tapestry sort of a visual for what's in Helena's mind.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I had not thought of it that way, but that could also explain like the delays and everything as well, and how, it takes time for what she's seeing to actually occur in real life. So
yeah, it's almost like she's making the tapestry in real time based off what she sees and then what actually unfolds. And so when I had that thought, I was like, that's a really cool tie-in. And maybe it's intentional, maybe it's not. But either way, I feel like there is clearly a connection. Because remember, the first season, Helaena is basically not in the show at all. And the intro is totally different. And then immediately, season 2, episode 1, Helena's embroidering. The intro has changed. And it just feels like a nice tie-in. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of cool. But to go back into actually the tapestry update for this specific episode, it was finally updated based on the events of Rook's Rest. You can see a embroidered scene of soldiers. They're dead. They're on fire, just like what Kristen Cole saw. And then you see 2 dragons on either side with a figure standing in the middle holding a raised sword. My guess is that the dragons are meant to represent Meleys and Vhagar, and the figure is Aemond in the middle. However, it's not super clear. I tried to zoom in on a little bit because it happened so quick. And so I kept pausing and looking, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's what it is. But if I'm wrong, please someone let us know because I'm not perfect. And, they're just not the easiest thing in the world. But yeah.
Yeah.
All right. On to the episode title. So I don't know why this bothers me, but this time when I watched it on Sunday night, the title was displayed.
Yes, so I've been looking for it specifically now.
I was like, what the fuck? I just did a whole thing on a public podcast that will live forever that they're not posting it. And then they did. They're really clowning me. They're clowning me.
Maybe they listened to us and they were like, oh shit, they're right. Let's put the episode titles up.
That's what I was thinking. I'm like, Ryan Condal, Emmett Darcy. You know what? I bet the whole cast and crew, they just get together every Thursday and they listen to the Booked on Fantasy podcast. And then, they make adjustments based off that. That's my best guess. I mean, what else could it be?
We're so famous.
I know.
What else could it be?
Yes. They're certainly not listening to the actually syndicated House of the Dragon. Yeah, the official one. They're listening to ours. I mean, I will say ours is probably, a little bit funnier. I mean, I don't want to brag, but we're pretty funny. But the title of the episode is called Small Folk. This is pretty heavy-handed on what it is a representation of. It has been a theme throughout the show from the very first season that the small folk are often overlooked, going way back to Rhaenyra's scene with Daemon when she's watching that play. And she's like, what they want is of no consequence. And Daemon's like, it is of great consequence. Going to Aegon's interactions with the small folk all the way to this episode where Aemon is like, who cares if they're hungry? We see this manifest in the scene with Alicent and Helena when they're fleeing the Sept. And the small folk are just rioting. Not to mention the other storyline that's woven in there of Rhaenyra and Massaria sending the boats with gifts of food. And so this really is all about the small folk and their plight. And we'll talk about it when we get there more. But I feel that the events of this episode specifically have set up the tone for future episodes and maybe even the next season about how what's happening in King's Landing with the small folk is going to affect Team Green in a big way.
Oh, I mean, the small folk were already rioting, rising up against them. It's like pandemonium in the streets. So I could see a situation where if the Greens try to do anything, there's going to be extreme civil unrest amongst the small folk. Like they will probably combat against Team Green now and fight on Rhaenyra's side, potentially. Oh, yeah. So.
Well, I mean, they were literally shouting, long live Queen Rhaenyra.
Right. And that one guy was like, she still thinks of us,
Even now.
Yeah. All right. So to get started with the episode progression, we start off with Jason Lannister, who's riding with his 1,000 men to meet with Lord Humphrey, who is the head of House Lefford. He has 500 men to offer him. The Lord asks if they will be heading to Harrenhal, and Jason instructs them to send a raven to Tyland, stating they are ready to march as soon as Aemond joins with Vhagar. Until that time, Jason states they will make good use of the available hospitality and strides right past him.
Also, I could be wrong, but I just want to clarify. He has 1,000 men, but then he also says, and 7 times that in archers and soldiers. So I think he has like roughly 8,000 is how
Got a big old army.
A big old army. So yeah, because I just want to, because the only reason I brought attention to that is because when we talk about the Fantasy Court of Law, there's a big difference in 1,000 men versus 8,000.
Right.
So that's the only reason I wanted to point that out. Okay. Also, this is not important analysis at all, but did you see the fucking lion in the cage? They brought lions to battle with them.
I don't know how that's going to go. I guess maybe they've learned to train them or something, but I was like, whoa. I did not realize that they would actually have not dragons, lions.
Feels weird for them to have dragons and lions in the same universe. It doesn't compute for me. I'm like, where are your giraffes,
I know a lion's pretty scary, but in my mind, compared to a dragon, it's like a goat.
Oh, I know.
But against other men, I'm sure a lion would be a fairly formidable opponent. But yeah.
But what's to stop the lion from turning around and just chomping a Lannister? Like.
I know. Anybody? I guess they must have figured out how to train it or something. The Lannisters are like, how to train your lion, I guess so. Anyway, now we cut back to King's Landing. Upon receiving the raven, Aemond is pissed that the Lannisters can't handle the Riverlands on their own as he speaks with the council. Tyler reminds him that Daemon's dragon is in the Riverlands, but Aemond snaps back that he's not a dog to be summoned. Aemond keeps like a tight leash on this council, and he's like, no, you're not going to tell me shit.
I will say I don't enjoy his brand of ruling, but he is staunch in how he runs his council. At least he has a style of ruling.
True. I mean, at bare minimum, he's not going to be walked over, and he's decisive and is steadfast in those decisions. But also, that's not good, because if you're wrong about something,
he's not going to take it very well.
Right. It's kind of a slippery slope. Alicent tries to interject, but Aemond goes on to state he wants Tyland to make an alliance with the Triarchy to do something about the blockade. Tyland is shocked by this, stating it would be dangerous. Aemond ignores this and states it would distract Corlys and Driftmark and allow them and the Lannisters and Hightower ships to pass more easily through. Alicent again steps in to say the Triarchy may play at accepting terms, but they are not to be trusted. Your father knew this. We have seen scenes with the Triarchy previously. We know that they were a huge nuisance and a huge sucker of resources and time, men, money as they tried to defeat them. And I mean, they kind of came back twice, right? They didn't take care of them the first time. The resurgence comes back through, then they have to beat them again. So I feel like the Triarchy's pretty set on this idea that they don't really like the situation with Westeros. Like they're opposing them pretty strongly.
Basically the entire first season, Westeros is in conflict in the Stepstones with the Triarchy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think Alicent's counsel there is pretty smart. It's not a bad idea that Aemond has, but he definitely needs to tread with caution.
So then they discuss the status with the Greyjoys, who have been silent in engaging with the Greens. And then, what was his name? Oh, Jasper, the curly-haired man whose name I always forget.
Oh, yeah, Jasper.
Jasper Wild suggests perhaps an offering of marriage using Alicent would prompt them to join their forces. Alicent looks over to Cole briefly, but then says, out of the question. And then I did think that it was funny that he looks over to Cole and just says, alas, like he knew like something was going on between them. And it seems like most people do at this point.
Or suspect. Even if they don't know that they've acted upon it, just that they do harbor some kind of feelings towards each other.
Yeah. Cole steps in this time and agrees with Alicent that it's not wise to trust the Triarchy. And then Aemon states it's time for Cole to go back to Harrenhal. But Cole pushes back, stating their army is low in men and they're still recovering from Rook's Rest. But Aemon continues and states we must strike now while the time is ripe, and that he will fly out to join them when the time is ripe. My uncle is a challenge I welcome if he dares face me. So again, I think we've had this idea that Aemon really views Daemon as like his ultimate kind of challenge, and somebody that he previously having maybe aspired to be a little bit is now viewing him as like his ultimate personal conquest. He's like, if I can defeat Daemon, then it will bring me much personal glory.
Oh yeah, I think Aemon feels that he is superior to everyone in every way except for Daemon. That Daemon is the only one worthy of his time and challenge.
Yes. So after this, Aemon dismisses the rest of the council, but he stops Alicent. Aemon starts to remind her of her place, but then ultimately dismisses her from the council. Alicent is pissed and says, you have the impetuousness of youth and its arrogance, neither of which is desired in a king. Aemon responds, I release you of your seat, such as it was. I'm sure you'll be much pleased to return to more domestic pursuits. Alicent responds, have the indignities of your childhood not yet sufficiently been avenged? But Aemon doesn't respond to this, and instead he just walks off, and as he leaves, he says, you have the gratitude of the crown. Alicent looks really stunned and shocked by this, and probably a little bit like, well, shit. I mean, you know, if I really didn't have any control, I definitely don't anymore. So...
The scene was a little interesting to me because I had to ask myself, why is he firing her? Because it seems to me that Aemond and Alicent have a relatively close relationship. It doesn't seem as troubled as Aegon and Alicent's relationship. I've always gotten the impression he does love and care for his mother. Obviously, he's not super gushy or effusive about it, but you don't see any negative interactions between the two of them. And when Aemond is firing her, it doesn't seem like he's doing it with malice or hatred or anything. It really seems kind of matter of fact, like, what is your purpose here? What do you do here? And why do you feel that it's necessary? And so I almost think part of it is because she's a woman and he's just like, why would a woman serve on my council? You're not needed here. Go. When he says that little thing about to pursue more domestic pursuits, it kind of sounds like a jab, like go do some embroidering with Helena and stay out of the political business. It's kind of how it seemed. And then even when she says, you know, how the indignities of your childhood not yet officially been avenged, she puts her hand on his face and he like holds her hand and kind of leans into the touch. And so it feels like an organic, not loving, but just tender moment, I guess, in a way between a mother and son. So it's kind of an interesting scene in that regard for the dynamic of their relationship.
Mm-hmm. It's hard to tell. I don't think Aemond hates his mom, but I think he does recognize that Alicent, I guess, for lack of a better term, maybe has like flip-flopped a lot. Because remember when he's talking with Cole and they're strategizing about Rook's Rest and everything in Harrenhal, and he had been like,
she holds love for her enemies
and holds love for her enemies. Yes. And so I think he probably views her empathy as a weakness, and he doesn't want that to interfere with plans he has to just totally crush the Blacks. Because I think he knows Alicent would likely step in and try to advise caution and progressing kind of slowly or something. And Aemon's very succinct with his decisions. He's like, no, this is what we're doing. I got fucking Vhagar. What are they going to do? You know, so
I think that's totally fair. I think where I get hung up and confused is that he fires Alicent because she's more cautious, a tempering voice. But then he tells Larys later to get Otto Hightower back to King's Landing as Hand of the King. And
that's true.
I feel that Otto Hightower, in a lot of ways, is the same kind of tempering, reasonable, we need to think this through political voice. And so why does he not want Alicent, but he wants Otto Hightower?
I think maybe it's because Otto has never wanted the Blacks. He may be more cautious like Alicent, but he's never, again, like you said, held empathy for the enemy in that sense,
he wanted to
right? Like he's
off him immediately.
He was totally for that idea. I mean, it was Otto's whole game plan to usurp the Blacks and put the Greens on the throne. And so from day one, Otto has never wanted the Blacks in charge. And that's how Aemond feels, with which, as we've seen with Alicent, again, being empathetic, having been friends with Rhaenyra previously. And also, since I think being in this state of just conflict and confusion about everything that she's done for her entire life up until this point, once she realized that Viserys's vision and what he said to her was not about their son Aegon, I think that really threw her off. And I think that confusion shows, and Aemond probably can sense that.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if Hightower comes back and how Aemond interacts with him, and then think about it in the context of his interactions with Alicent and Hightower.
Yeah. We'll see. So next we cut to Dragonstone. Corlys is there, and he's standing in the Black's council room. He puts on the pin for the Hand of the King, and then the rest of the council walks in. They call in Sir Steffan Darklyn, and Rhaenyra gives an overview of the situation and goes on to state, I must proceed as if I stand alone. Rhaenyra states that they need more riders for Vermithor, Silverring, and Seasmoke. And then she poses that Sir Darklyn could ride, stating the Darklyns and the Targaryens had some common blood. Your grandmother's grandmother, Arianna, was born a Targaryen princess. The council, of course, steps in and they're like, this is really risky. Are you sure you want to be doing this? Darklyn, though, comes around, he bends the knee and he says, "The dragons are gods. Your grace honors me beyond what I deserve." Rhaenyra informs him of the risk of death to try and ride a dragon, but Darklyn agrees and reiterates his commitment to her cause.
I just, real quick about this. Rhaenyra mentions later that Darklyn had the best claim based on her research. And I would just like to point out that the grandmothers would be like 6 generations ago. So if your best claim is someone who 6 generations ago was a Targaryen princess, the odds are not going to be in your favor. And it just seems crazy to me that if we're talking about it in terms of who has the most amount of Targaryen blood or the strongest bloodline, that immediately you don't think of children, bastard children. Because Ulf, Hugh, Adam, they're all going to have way, way more Targaryen blood or whatever than someone who 6 generations ago, their grandmother's grandmother was a Targaryen princess.
Well, I wonder if she feels like maybe that would be too much of an offense or something, even though we all know that Jace is a bastard and her other 2 kids. But I think if she suggested bastards, that would probably be a lot worse. And so maybe she's testing with past descendants or something. I don't know.
I think you're right. Because when she's talking to Sir Darklyn, she says, "You're of noble birth." And I think that line is intentional, is because you share Targaryen blood, but also you're from a noble house.
I don't know. But point being, it was likely that this wasn't going to go well, and it doesn't. So next we're at Harrenhal with Daemon again. Surprise, Daemon is hearing shit, and this time he thinks he's talking to Viserys. Vision Viserys reminds him of the time Daemon had called his dead child the heir for a day, and then goes on to state his grievances with Daemon's behavior and how he had pushed Daemon back out. Daemon begins to cry and then backs away before getting shut into the room. He begs to be let out, and then he snaps back into reality as Simon opens the door. Daemon is, of course, freaking out, and Simon says, "I do wonder, Your Grace, if you're getting enough sleep." This old place as they back away toward the banquet hall. Daemon pulls out a knife and he goes on to accuse Simon of working against him. He puts a knife to Simon's throat and says, "Perhaps you're an agent of the Hightower rabble, or are you still in league with your club-footed nephew? Or is it Rhaenyra herself?" I don't think that this was supposed to be funny, but of course, somehow Simon starts shushing Daemon in the middle of his rant.
He's like, "Shh, my sweet prince."
He's like trying to calm him down. Yeah.
No. Okay, this is totally not a fantasy reference. Well, I guess our superheroes fantasy, I don't know. But for any of you that are immersed in the Avengers universe, when the Hulk when they need to get him to go back to being Mark Ruffalo, they're like, the sun's going down, the sun's very low. And this is like a running joke in the Avengers universe. And that's what it made me think of. It was just so fun. For all my Avengers fans out there, that's exactly what it reminded me of.
That's hilarious. Good old Simon Strong. He's not even freaking out, which I think is kind of funny. But I mean, it's pretty clear that Daemon is just going batshit crazy by this point. He's on his final straw with this place. So
I like when Daemon's walking away and the last thing he says is, "And stop looking at me." he's like, "Yes, Your Grace." Just so ridiculous. Also, I was just very excited to see Paddy Constantine again. I love him. I was like, yay! So they basically brought back everybody, because they even brought back Aemma, except for young Alicent. I'm very sad about that, because I really liked young Alicent.
Yeah, well, I think after seeing Viserys finally, I feel like this has been the purpose for so many of Daemon's visions, is that he had to go and make his peace with each of the people that he has most been affected by or most wronged. And of course, that's Rhaenyra, his parents, and Viserys. So
yeah,
finally, now that he's come full circle with everybody, he can fucking leave. So
we hope. Well, I guess to that end, he made his peace with Viserys in this episode, but he has yet to make peace with a hallucination of Rhaenyra. His last hallucination with Rhaenyra, he beheads her. So he hasn't made any kind of peace with her. Maybe that is meant to be representative of why he's continuing to be shown these visions in Harrenhal. He'll keep seeing them until he makes it right mentally.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if he'll see Rhaenyra again in the next episode. And that's when he'll finally realize my place, my position, I need to serve Rhaenyra, and then it'll stop. So maybe that's kind of what it's meant to represent.
That could be it too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, Rhaenyra is still alive. And so it's extra important that he comes to terms with that in particular, because he has an opportunity to fix that relationship moving forward. So we continue with Daemon. He obviously is freaked out by his latest vision and he's had enough. So he rushes outside and he walks out past Alice in the courtyard. Alice asks if he was going to say goodbye, but Daemon just keeps walking as he says, "Something is wrong with me. They poisoned me." They start to argue, and Alice says, "This is your way. When something does not please you, you run. Dragonstone, the Stepstones, Pentos, Harrenhal." And Daemon says, "I awake and I do not know where I've been." Alice reveals there are older things in this world than you or I, or living memory. You are not the player, but a piece on the, as am I, for that matter. And I think this is finally the point where we get confirmation from Alice herself about, why she's really there. I think she's there to remind Daemon his past indiscretions and his behavior and attempt to get him to reconcile all of this inner conflict.
So I had two things to say about that conversation. The first is I felt that the scene was actually kind of interesting and also nice between Alice and Daemon, because my original impression was that, not that Alice was evil, but that she was definitely not on Daemon's side. And now it seems that she is. Like, she's actually there to help Daemon. Because it's not immediately obvious what her role is and what her purpose is. And so it does at this point now seem that she's really there to help Daemon work through his issues, but also to actually help him take care of him.
Right.
And then I like that Alice has a lot of interesting insight into what it means to be a ruler, especially like when she's talking about the crown and she says, it's not a prize to be won, but a burden to bear. I think that is very insightful and important. And Daemon needs to hear that, right? Well, really, I guess everybody in the realm needs to hear that, because I think that is very reflective of Viserys in season 1, is that he felt the weight of the crown. And I think Rhaenyra has always felt that as well, is that she understands it's a responsibility. And of course, there are perks, but the burdens far outweigh the perks. And then also, for those of you who are wondering, Daemon says something about that dotard. I don't know.
Dotard. Yeah. Dotard. Yeah.
Dotard is of no use to us. And for those of you who were like, that sounds really insulting, what does that mean? I looked it up because it was bothering me. And it is an old person assessing one who has become physically weak or whose mental faculties have declined. So that aligns with how Oscar Tully has been described. Also important to note, when Alice says, "Do nothing, the winds will shift in 3 days," that is obvious foreshadowing for the events that happen a little bit later, which we'll talk about when we get there. But there's just a couple of things I pulled out of that scene, which I thought were interesting. And I always like to, update my repertoire of insults. I don't know if I can come up with dotard anytime soon in any of my insults to anyone.
It's like the old language word for being senile, I guess.
I know, right? But it sounds really insulting. Oh my gosh. It sounds...
You dotard.
Dotard. I'm a dotard. Oh my God. It sounds really insulting. It really does.
It does. There's so many words in this show that I'm like, ooh, I gotta write all those down and remember them so I can just whip them out. You can counter me because most people don't know what the words mean either. So.
Like, get a dictionary. Yeah, we'll talk about that in Sir Gawain's scene when he says salubrious, because I was like, what the fuck is salubrious? Yes. What are the writers doing in there? Don't they know we're just a bunch of small folk out here? We're illiterate. We can't read, okay? Say what you mean in words that we understand.
Why do you think I'm watching the show and not watching the book? Just kidding. Or watching the book.
Wow.
Point proven.
Booked on Fantasy Podcast, here to bring you high-level analysis.
We do read, by the way, guys. In case
Not
you didn't
very
know.
well, though. Not very well.
We read for the plot, not for vocabulary, I guess. Anyways.
Apparently not.
Okay, to get back on track.
Okay. Oh, it's time for Sir Stefan Sparklin.
Oh, okay, yeah. I did have one more thing to say about Alice really quick, though. So that conversation, as we talked about, ends with Alice giving him some advice about how to proceed and indicates that she herself will also help Daemon. But she had said the Tullys are not the largest or the richest, but the most stable. The Tullys' wisdom has kept the river houses in line for centuries, and they would kill each other essentially without that stability. So without him, Lord Tully and the Tullys, they will never raise their banners as one. Rivermen are made of mud. They would rather die stuck in it than yield 1 inch to one another. That's just important to understand because that is the key to getting all of the Riverlands is to get the Tullys. And as we see, seems like that's going to work out in Daemon's favor. And things are going to go right for him, finally.
I think that quote about just how all the lords of the Riverlands are is pretty indicative of why it's been so hard for Team Green or Team Black to get them to rally. And I think we're going to see that manifest in the next episode because there's a brief next time on House of the Dragon where you see Oscar Tully and Daemon and he's like, you've really fucked this up. And all the River Lords are like, so I think there's going to be a big scene where everyone is stubborn.
Yes, I agree. So to move on, Rhaenyra, Jace, and the Dragon Meisters, they are now from their little dragon launch pad area, and they are singing and summoning a dragon for Lord Darkland. At this time, we're not sure which one it's going to be, but there's a long pause after they finish the chant, and then one starts to approach. They're commanding him to slow down and serve, and it is Seasmoke. Darkland starts talking to Seasmoke. He says, Seasmoke, Dohaeris. And then the rest of the Maesters, the Maesters keep commanding him to be calm and to obey. Darkland continues trying to speak to Seasmoke as well. And then Seasmoke actually lies down. And you kind of see this moment of like stunned shock. I too was like, oh, maybe Seasmoke is going to do it, right? He is going to let Darkland ride him. But Darkland starts to slowly approach. And he ends up saying, he gets closer to Seasmoke. He says,
I've done it.
I've done it. Yes, that's right. And that is when Seasmoke changes his mind. He gets up and then he just roasts them all to smithereens.
Okay. I am dying to talk about this scene. Okay. I know it's not supposed to be funny, but I literally started laughing from the beginning until the end. Okay. So the first thing is, I like how anytime there's a dragon, they all start singing. I literally wrote, cue the dragon handler choir. And so they're singing them a lullaby. Okay?
Yeah.
It's just so funny because you have these giant ancient beasts who are like, oh, they're singing a song. Ooh, And then the next thing is she's like, don't show any fear. And I'm like, lady, there's a fire-breathing giant about to pop out. Okay, don't show any fear. And then I was crying when there's like the 4 dragon handler people and they're literally all holding sticks.
Oh my god, yes, that's what I wrote down. I was like, what the hell are these sticks for? And what is the point of them? They're like sitting there and I was like, he's not like a fucking marshmallow. That stick is not going to protect you from his flames. I was like, I do not understand the point of them because they all have them and they like hold them out in front of them as if they're going to defend themselves with it. Yeah. I don't know. I also thought that was really funny.
Well, and they're not sharp, so you can't poke them to get them to go back. They honestly look like the fancy twigs that people buy at Home Goods and put in a vase in the corner of their living room. I'm like, what are you going to do with that? Like, what are you going to do? And then, oh my God, Seasmoke, he's the baddest boy because he literally like looks and he lays down his head and he looks so approachable. He's like, good boy. He's like, come closer.
Yeah.
And then in Darkland, he's like, I've done it. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that's not going to go well.
I know. That's the fatal blow.
And then 2 seconds later, Seasmoke lifts up his head and everyone takes off running and just like, oh my God, I know it's not supposed to be funny, but honestly, that entire scene was hysterical to me. I loved it. I loved it.
Yeah, it was pretty brutal to watch because they all get flamed and like, I think,
Well, that part
I don't
was
know
sad.
if it was, yeah. And, you know, the one, was it a maester, I think, that has the knife and he like slits his throat? I don't know.
No, it's one of the dragon handlers.
Or
one of the
what
4 dragon
handlers. They don't call them maester, but what do they call them?
You know, I don't know.
I don't actually know either. But anyways, yeah, it was one of them that has a knife and slits his throat because he doesn't want to
burn alive,
have a slower death from burning. I honestly did feel like when Darkland had said, I've done it, that's when Seasmoke decided, like, no. Because people were saying, oh, it's because Darkland showed fear, but I don't think that's accurate because
I don't think so either.
Adam was running in like total fear too. And
absolute fear, abject terror.
Yes. And so I was like, no, it's not a fear thing. I really just feel like it's because Darkland was overconfident and Seasmoke just didn't like him. And so he was like, I changed my mind.
It's a no for me.
Thanks. Yeah, it's a no for me.
Yeah. Fun fact about that scene, they did actually light those guys on fire. I mean, of course, safety, stunt doubles, and lots of flame retardant gel and special prosthetics and stuff. But that's crazy to me that they do that and that there are guys willing to try that. If you ever watch the behind the scenes show about each episode, they talk at length about how they pulled that off. And it's really cool. Gives me a whole new respect for stunt doubles because you ain't gonna light me on fire.
It's a risky job.
Yeah, it really is.
Props to them. So after this, we cut to Driftmark. Corlys walks up to Alan and he asks him to sail with him as his first mate. And Alan is a little bit like, I don't know. He says, I'm grateful for the offer, my lord, but... And then Corlys really doesn't give an opportunity to back out of it. He just says, we will set course for Sharp Point. Lord Bar Emmon wishes to send his nephew aboard as a boatswain, I think is what he said.
That sounds right.
Alan tried. Yeah. Sometimes I type things and I'm like, was it misspelled? Did I catch that right? But
we can't read and we're not sailors, so don't ask us.
Alan tries to protest, stating there are more experienced people, and Corlys says he was younger than him when he took command, and he is not only capable, but well respected by the crew as well. Alan asks if this is a request or a command, and Corlys then commands him to report on the morrow for duties.
The only thing I have to say about the scene very quickly is that Alan is wearing a head covering, and that is super important and very intentional. And we will discuss that in the scene when Adam and Alan are talking and he is shaving his head. But I just want to point out
to hide his
Targaryen hair.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, that's very intentional that he's wearing that because he's not wearing it in any of his other previous scenes.
Right.
So that in conjunction with the scene that happens later is very important.
Good catch. I had not thought about that, but you're right. So after this, we cut to Ulf in a tavern, and there's a few people in there, and they're all starting to complain about the state of the city and their lack of decent food. I wasn't sure who this woman was, but you said it was Madame Sylvie in the summary. And then it is Madame Sylvie for sure.
I'm like 99.9% sure it's Madame Sylvie. Because remember, she says my girls got sent to the king or to the castle to aim it with Aemond. Her girls would be, she's Madame. It's her.
Oh, okay. I don't know why she looked different to me. She did not look like the same, but
because
like her face looked different.
Wasn't by her.
No,
that's why she looked different.
But that too, but just I don't know, something like her facial structure looked different to me for some reason. But I don't know. Anyways, Madame Sylvie states that the new Prince Regent is certainly not short on food or money when he held a banquet full of delicious food. Ulf says that ain't right. King Viserys loved his feast and his wine, but never while our small folk were without. Madame Sylvie agrees and then says, but he's gone now and its rightful heir denied her seat. Ulf seems to ponder this, and then Madame Sylvie dismisses herself. Obviously, I'm just waiting to see what Ulf's greater purpose is. We know he's a dragon seed. he's probably going to get a dragon at some point.
I think he is too. I just don't know how we're going to get from where he is now as a character to on a dragon.
Right.
With Adam, it kind of makes sense. Even with Hugh, you can see it brewing with his character, but Ulf is just a good time guy, like a middle-aged dad bod. I'm here for a good time, not a long time. It's like,
right.
How is he going to get from here to Dragonstone to get a dragon? I don't know. Also, I just want to point out that the serving girl is Diana. This is like the third time we've seen her. This is the young servant that Alicent dismissed after Aegon assaulted her in the first season. She's in that very first tavern scene with Ulf. Obviously, we see Alinda talk to her at the end of the last episode with the plan for Massaria, and then she comes up again. So I think that's a nice tie-in that they keep bringing her back and using her character.
Yes, and this is also one of the other plans that Massaria and Rhaenyra hatched. I think this was like phase 1, and then the gift of food on the ships was like phase 2 of their little plan. So
very intentional.
Next, we are back at Dragonstone, and another councilman is complaining to Rhaenyra about how the test with Lord Darkland was foreseeable and just being annoying. I think this was Lord, what was his name? Bartimos?
Bartimos, yep.
Yeah. And then they're also like walking in a hallway during this time. So this is just like out in the open for all to hear. And then Rhaenyra stops, turns around, and slaps him right in the face. Yeah, but then she says, "It is my fault, I think, that you have forgotten to fear me."
I love that line. The way she delivers it. Chef's kiss. So good.
Yeah.
So good.
I felt like this was probably a combo of stress and annoyance, and maybe she shouldn't have slapped him, but I think it was deserved.
She definitely should not have. It's a bad look. But, sometimes you just gotta let people have it and be like, I'm the queen. Okay? Look at
me. Look
at me.
I know.
I'm the queen.
Well, he also started all of this out in the open himself, too, which is pretty disrespectful, in my opinion. Like, it's not even in the privacy of the council room or anything. So
that's true.
Anyways. So we are with Rhaenyra again. This time she is alone in her room and she's picking up a sword. She's testing it out and fighting with it. And Massaria comes in. They discuss the situation with Darkland, and Massaria encourages her to keep looking, stating, "Might there be others among the highborn of the Seven Kingdoms?" Rhaenyra says, "And who would be so foolish as to try?" after hearing what the hell Cersei. Massaria goes on to inform her that their plan to spread rumors among the small folk has worked. And then Rhaenyra asks if it will really work, considering Aemon would likely quash any rebellion immediately. But Massaria assures her that he cannot destroy his own city. It is harder to wage war abroad when you must keep peace at home. Rhaenyra agrees with this, and then before the scene ends, Massaria says, "This becomes you," to Rhaenyra before she walks away.
I am starting to like Massaria's character better, but I still I don't know. All of their scenes are just...
I really thought it was supposed to be like a friendship. And so I will say when we get there that I was, or before we get there, I guess, that I was very caught off guard from it. I just really did not see it coming.
Oh, yeah. I wrote quite a long response. I was texting Lorraine about it in real time. And I was like, I have so many things to say. We should record right now because I am charged. I am heated.
Yeah. So next we get to a brief scene with the common folk. We see people in line to get food, and it happens to run out right as Hugh's wife runs up begging for something. The Greens knights ride past with a cart of sheep in tow, which obviously is just a huge slap in the face of the people. Everyone's very upset by this. Ulf among them, who begins shouting, "Where's our meat?" I mean, it's just crazy. And it really shows the difference too, right? Because I think in the scene later, people are saying Viserys never would have done this, and Rhaenyra takes care of us, but the Greens are out here just flaunting their own availability of food and everything while everybody else is starving. So
yeah, I will say I'm 99% sure those sheep are for the dragons specifically.
I think so too.
So there's that. But okay, so I have this note and I just don't really know where to put it. So I'm just going to slap it here because it feels organic. I don't understand why there's no food in King's Landing, because I understand the blockade is in effect, right? And that inhibits trade from across the sea. But if you look at a map of Westeros, the entire map is basically team green. And why can they not get trade from literally anywhere else on the continent?
I don't know. That was a little bit weird.
Why are they pretending their only source of food is for across the step zones? That doesn't make any sense. I do believe they absolutely engage in trade through, for that area. And I could even see there being shortages of things. But for them to be like, oh, there's a blockade, we literally can't get any food, when literally the entire continent is wide open and it would be very, very easy to transport things across. It is confusing to me.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I was just kind of under the impression that as a larger city, I think they're just not set up to handle food. Like maybe they had always relied on other people to supply the city specifically with food, and with the blockade and stuff and the influx or the import of food being cut off, then the rest of the places that King's Landing would go to pull to get food maybe is also cut off. So it's like, I think that just the whole supply chain, I guess, is disrupted. But you're right. I thought it was kind of weird. And also I was like, you guys are also right by the ocean. I mean, granted, everybody's complaining about fish, but I'm also like, well, fishes and seafood is available. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I'm just tired of it.
Yeah. Or maybe they just don't have the right equipment or enough of the right.
I think it's enough too, though it's hard to continue fishing at that pace.
Yes. Yeah. We're just going to ignore that.
For the sake of the plot. Yep.
Yes. Yep. We are next back in the council with Aemond, and Larys informs him that the small folk are getting restless and angry as they run out of food. Aemond suggests they must do something about the blockade because he blames Rhaenyra for this, which I'm like, Aemond, okay, it's pretty cold-hearted of you, but
I mean, he's Larys not wrong though. It is Rhaenyra's
he's
blockade.
Not wrong. But I'm also like, okay, well, you're responsible for the people now. So even if Rhaenyra is doing something, you can't just be like, oh, Rhaenyra, you're the one that actually needs to step up and problem solve here. But Larys states, the enemy without may be fought with swords. The enemy within is more insidious. Aemond questions why they are not mad at Rhaenyra, again, stating that she was the one that started the blockade. But Larys says, they will look to you to ensure their well-being. That is the burden of authority, but you should not incur it alone. And then Larys goes on to ask what his plan is for a new hand, which is obviously a low-key play for himself. Aemond says, do you take me for a fool? I have little patience for the self-important Lord Larys, and even less for flatterers and lickspittlers. We're going to add that to the repertoire of insults.
I need to Google what that means.
But then he says, but you are correct. Every king needs a hand. I'll make it your responsibility. You kind of see this moment where Larys is like, oh, is he going to ask me to be king? Or not king, sorry, hand. But Aemond says, not you, you toad. He's like, go get Otto Hightower.
The way he says that was such disdain. He's like, no, not you, you imbecile. Like, it's so demeaning. And honestly, it was hilarious. I laughed out loud at that part.
It is funny. I wasn't really sure what Larys and Aemond's relationship was going to be. Obviously, we know that Larys was able to kind of manipulate Aegon. And I don't know, it almost seems like he likes Aegon in a scene later. But it's interesting that Aemond, is very smart. He's very perceptive of things. And he's like, this is a personal play for you, Larys, and I don't like it. So not going to oblige you. Orwell interrupts to announce that Aegon has awakened for a little bit and says he may yet live. Thank the gods. Next, we go to Aemond. He goes to visit Aegon. Aegon is alive, but he definitely still looks like shit and also looks pretty scared of Aemond. Aemond comes up to him. He presses his hand into his wound to intentionally inflict pain. I did not like the scene, and it really did not make me... It did not buy any favor for Aemond on my part.
I don't think it's supposed to. I think you're supposed to not like Aemond in the scene very specifically.
Yeah. It's really cruel. But he says, what do you remember? And Aegon is like, nothing. which I don't think is true, but obviously
No,
he's lying.
he definitely remembers. Absolutely,
Yes.
he does.
Yeah, for sure. And Aemon just says, "You challenged Melees. It was foolish." Then Aegon again is just like, "I remember nothing. I appease you." Obviously, again, like I said, this is a threat from Aemond, but at that time, Orwell walks in and Aemond walks out, asking him to just make sure Aegon is comfortable.
I definitely feel this is a very menacing scene. There's something about the way Aemond kisses Aegon's forehead. It looks affectionate, but it feels so threatening. And I can't put my finger on what it is about that, but something just literally gave me goosebumps. I was like, he is not to be messed with. I feel so bad for Aegon because obviously he's in a lot of pain and everything, but he's basically defenseless. Even if Aemon tried to do something, Aegon has no recourse right now. There's nothing he can do to protect himself. And so it's a very foreboding scene.
Yeah. It was almost like a kiss of death, like on Aemon's part.
Might be.
We'll see what happens to Aegon yet. So far, he's alive, and according to everyone else, he will make a recovery if there's no interference.
Big if there. Big if.
So next, we get a very brief scene with Rhaenyra. She walks with little Joffrey outside, and she's comforting him, but eventually they walk into a charred section of land, and it's clear that a dragon has been there. Rhaenyra is then sitting in the room with the children, and we see the baby dragons have hatched, and they are just surrounding the babies, which I thought was really cute. And then shortly after this, the baby
dragons. Oh my God. Okay, but also actually seeing the baby dragon, I kind of see why Lady Jane was pissed when Rhaenyra rolls up. You have 2 dragons. Like, what are those dragons going to do? When she made that comment last episode where she's like, I have hounds that are more fearsome. I'm like, lady, you're being a little dramatic. But after seeing the dragon, I was like, oh, she kind of right, though.
They're only like a foot tall at this point, so
they're so cute. Oh my God,
they do look really cute. Oh, I know. Okay. But after this, Lady Arryn comes into the room and informs Rhaenyra that Prince Reggio answered the letters and agreed to house Rhaenyra's children and Rhaenyra. Arryn questions why Rhaenyra doesn't seem to be happy with the news, and Rhaenyra challenges her, saying, "You misled me. There is a large dragon in the Vale." Arryn responds, "Rumor of it began shortly after the war, ranging more broadly for food. It is large and formidable, but alas, wild." She then goes on to say they have a ship and some men to accompany Rhaenyra and the children to Pentos. But I am wondering, is Rhaenyra gonna get that dragon?
Yeah, she is, girl. I'm sorry. I just feel like Rhaenyra is fated to get a dragon. It's talked about so much about how she can't bond one. And you can see her really contemplating that when she's sitting there. I mean, she's holding that dragon toy and she's like, you didn't tell me there was a dragon. And you just know she's going to get that dragon.
She gonna go pet that dog. Can I pet that dog?
Hopefully it goes better. Okay, get distracted. Okay. Oh my God. One of the reels we made on YouTube was about the dragon battle in Rooksrest and how it was very sad. And there was a little bit of a troll on the comments of that. He was kind of giving us a hard time because you're crying about dragons. And I'm like, okay, but they're puppies. They're winged fire puppies. Yeah, they're not dragons. Are. And he was like, LOL, okay. And I was like, well, I'm sorry, you don't have a heart, okay? But that's what I'm just thinking of. I don't know. That's what made me. This I just think about the dragons as doggies. Very dangerous doggies.
Fire-breathing doggies. But
hopefully it goes better for Rhaenyra than it did for Sir Darkland. That's all I'll say.
Let's hope.
See. Yeah.
After this, we have Alan and Adam who are talking in their room. Alan is shaving his head, and Adam questions why he doesn't embrace Corlys and is offered to join him. Alan says, "Don't want my men to get the wrong idea." And Adam goes on to say, "You're just like him. You saved his life, brother. Do you never think about what could be ours, or yours anyway?" And Alan's response is, "We spent the whole of our lives in the shadow of the sea snake's great castle. I do not wish to dwell in it any longer." Adam seems a bit disappointed in the lack of any attention he seems to personally get from Corlys. But Alan says the sea snake would rather have high tide claimed by the sea than Corlys his sons. Stop wasting your life waiting for something that'll never come. So this is interesting because it does officially confirm that both Alan and Adam are in fact Corlys's true sons. So I think a lot is about to change for these brothers, obviously.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And so, as we mentioned earlier, it's important that Alan is wearing that head covering. And in this scene, we see that he is shaving his head. And if you'll notice, he has some very light blonde peach fuzz. And this is, you can tell that it's a very ritualistic act for Alan. It's something he does every day without fail. And it's because he doesn't want to be associated with Corlys. Because first of all, I still contend that they did the casting really well and they do look similar in their facial features and everything. And then obviously the blonde hair is a dead giveaway. Nobody has that blonde hair except for the Targaryens and the Velaryons. It is practically a banner that screams, I'm the Targaryen or Velaryon. And so that's very intentional, the way that that scene is done, meant to be very representative of how Alan feels about his parents, specifically Corlys. And I just think this, I don't know, conflict isn't the right word, but this juxtaposition of how Alan feels about it versus Adam is really interesting. And I'm curious to see how that's going to play out as it develops, because Corlys is obviously going to have to acknowledge that they're his sons now because Adam has bonded Seasmoke, and everyone's going to wonder how that's possible. And so I'm just curious to see how the three of them, how their scenes and their relationships develop.
Yes. Target number 1, Corlys is going to be under fire and questioning.
Yeah.
But also they may be like, okay, Corlys, do you have any others?
Yes,
Any
more
others so that we can get them to ride these dragons?
Yeah.
So after this, Rhaenyra is back at Dragonstone. She's overlooking the sea and she looks quite contemplative. Jace walks up to her and says, "It was a bold attempt. I admire you for it." Then he goes on to ask why she hit Lord Bartimos. And she says, "I have tired of being protected. I bring to mind too much their mothers or their daughters. They must see me a ruler, and the symbols of authority are not jewels and gowns, but the shield and the sword." Jace does affirm Rhaenyra, and he says, "My ruler is my mother, and I do not wish to see it otherwise." I just love Jace. He's a very loyal son, and I appreciate that about him.
He started to grow on me. I never disliked him, but I was just kind of like, I don't know. I didn't really think of him. But last episode with the phrase, and then now he's starting to be more of a player, and I like that.
They go on to discuss their next steps war-wise. Rhaenyra feels like she's done as much as she can for now, but Jace states even with the allies they've gained, it wouldn't be enough to challenge the Greens, and that they do in fact need to get Daemon and his dragon. Rhaenyra begins to explode and complain about everyone telling her yet again that they need to get Daemon back, but then Mysaria arrives to inform Rhaenyra the gift is sent. They have a quick exchange between each other, and Jace, I think, gets the memo that he's not supposed to be there, and he walks off, and it's clear he's probably annoyed that he wasn't involved in Rhaenyra and Mysaria's plan.
Yeah, Jace stay annoyed. He really does.
Yeah. He just wants to be involved and wants to play a larger role in helping Rhaenyra, but Rhaenyra seems very cautious about how much responsibility she gives him.
Yes, I agree. I think he feels suffocated by that, which is funny because that's exactly how Rhaenyra feels, and she's doing the same thing with Jace.
Next, we are in King's Landing. We see people digging for clams in the shore. And then one man sees a boat with the Targaryen black and red flag appear. And it turns out this boat is full of food. And then the man looks out to see several boats floating in, each of which are all filled with food as well. I actually really like this. Not only is it a fuck you to the Greens, but it's actually helpful to the people. Obviously, it's not going to be received well by them, or it's not going to be received well by the Greens, I should say. And it's going to cause a lot of civil unrest. But, I mean, the people are starving, so.
Yeah. And no, it's an absolutely brilliant ploy on Rhaenyra and Mysaria's behalf. It is fantastic. It's a fantastic way to create a disturbance really close to the Red Keep. And we'll talk about it I think it's like in the very next scene with them, but I think it's Visaria who says it's hard to wage a war abroad and keep the peace at home. And I think that is very indicative, and they've really achieved their end here.
Yeah.
I don't think the small folk can really swing the war in a meaningful way in terms of like actually storming the castle and overthrowing the Greens, but they can cause a lot of problems for them. And Team Green is still winning the war. I don't think anybody's under the impression that Team Black's, the tides have not turned in their favor yet. So anything they can do to disrupt and distract Team Green is going to be good for them.
Yeah. After this, Alicent is sitting in Aegon's room, and Orwell updates her on Aegon's state as she just sits there beside Aegon. Orwell says, "It is my sincere hope that his grace will be spared." And Alicent says, "And what will it be if he lives?" Which Orwell doesn't respond to that. She asks if they've gotten word back from Otto, but again, Orwell says no. And there is war in the Reach now, Your Grace. House Beesbury has raised arms against the Hightower host, retribution for their lord's demise. Which, this is not great, because I think it does cause Alicent to become worried, obviously, because Otto and her son are in
Old Town.
The Hightower, in Old Town with the Hightowers. But then she goes and walks over to Aegon, and she starts to kind of hold his face, and she says, I'm sorry.
For those of you that don't remember, when Orwell is talking about House Beesbury, if you'll recall, I believe it's season 1, episode 9, after Viserys has died, and they're in the Green Council, and they're trying to figure out how to proceed. Lord Beesbury is the only small council member who speaks against what they're doing. He calls it treason, and Cole tells him to sit down, and when he does, he pushes him down so hard that he smashes his head on his little stone ball. And that's what Orwell is referencing, is that clearly House Beesbury ain't happy about his death and the circumstances surrounding it. And I think Alicent definitely, I mean, how could you not remember that? Like, understands that's why. And because she looks a little sick when he says that. She's like, ooh, you're totally right. So that's what that's in reference to.
Oh,
it's coming back around.
Is it? Yeah. If it isn't the consequences of, well, she didn't do that.
Actions. So yeah.
Which was there and was part of the cover up. So Alicent then heads outside, and she goes to bid the soldiers farewell. It's clear that she looks like she wants to talk to Cole, but she goes and finds her brother Gwaine instead. She says, I wish to give you my blessing. Gwaine's kind of like, okay, thanks to my Queen Dowager. And then she goes on to ask Gwaine if he had heard from Otto, since she's gotten no reply from her ravens yet. He also says no. And then he states, if anyone were to hear from him, it would be her, since she was his favorite. Ooh, am I detecting a little bit of resentment from Gwaine or some jealousy? I don't know, but
I mean, it's possible.
Yeah. Alicent remarks it's strange to not have heard from him, but Green reminds her that Otto is resourceful and he will send news when there is news to send. After this, Alicent starts to kind of question about what life would have been like if Gwaine had been brought to the court instead. And then she also goes on to ask about Darren, wanting to know more about him. Gwaine seems confused that she doesn't really know what's going on with him, but he says he's 10 and 6 now. He's stalwart, clever, as adept with his lute as he is with the sword, and a feature in the fancies of many a young lady, I'll wager. And then, most importantly, he's kind. You just see like this look of relief from Alicent, I think, to know that Darren has at least turned out a decent person. So
at least one of the, well, I guess Elena's great. So 2 out of 4 are bad, 50% success rate.
Right. She says, kindness is a quality I find lacking in his brothers. And Gwaine says, you did well to send him to Ward. It seems the Red Keep, for all its privileges, may in fact be a less than salubrious environment for the forming of young men. And Alicent says, was it the court or was it their mother? And Gwaine just says, I'm sure you did your best. Gwaine goes to leave, and Alicent says that she'll give a prayer for him. And this conversation was interesting because, again, I think Alicent has just been contemplating everything, not only with the war, but also with how she raised her children. And ironically, the one child that she doesn't raise seems to be the one that turned out the best and the least fucked up. But I think Alicent feels some shame and regret about how her children in King's Landing turned out because of her parenting.
Yeah, I will say in Alicent's defense, Viserys was alive for the majority of his children's, childhood and adolescence. It took two to parent. I can tell you that from personal experience. It is not a job you can do for one. And well, I mean, obviously I know people do, but it's extremely difficult. It's difficult with two people. Not to mention, I think Gwen's comment that the Red Keep itself may not be the best environment to raise a child. Don't get me wrong. I definitely think Alicent has a lot of shortcomings as a mother, but they were also raised in, I think, an environment that is not ideal for raising well-rounded, kind children. And I thought this scene was actually very touching. I think Gwen can recognize that Alicent is having a little bit of a crisis of confidence, and she needs to hear that one of her children is okay. And I don't think Gwen's lying or anything, but I think it's nice that Gwen recognized that and at least tried to offer her that comfort. I found the scene to be very touching, much more than I originally thought it would be when it first started.
Yeah. It seems like it gives her maybe just a little bit of hope for the future in a way, because she's probably felt hopeless or felt very out of control within King's Landing. So
also, I just want to know why Otto's not responding to anybody. I guess he's just mad. Like he's just being petty because he got fired. I don't know.
Or I almost wonder if he's preoccupied with fighting because the Beastberries have risen against them. So I feel like maybe he's just been having to deal with that. But it is a little bit weird. And even Alicent finds that weird. So I almost wonder if something happened to him.
I think he's okay. Maybe he's just licking his wounds and he's just mad at being fired. I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, who knows? But at the end of this scene, Alicent and Cole also have a good long stare at each other before they leave. And I do almost feel bad for them in that moment.
Almost, but not quite.
Yeah. After this, Alicent finds Helena, and Helena has an interesting line. She's looking at her, I think there are crickets in the cage, and she says, "This one stopped singing. Isn't it strange?" I don't have any ideas about what this means other than that I feel like it's foreshadowing for somebody dying. But okay, go ahead.
Okay.
What do you think?
So I've seen two explanations. Thank you, internet. One seems much more realistic to me than the other. So would you like to hear the one that is plausible but unlikely, or the one that is more likely? Which one would you like to hear first?
Let's hear the plausible but unlikely. I'm feeling a little crazy today.
Okay. So the plausible but unlikely is that the three crickets, there's three cages, represents Aegon, Aemond, and Helena. And that the reason that the crickets stop singing is because one of them is going to die soon. And so it's meant to be representative of their voice being eliminated. The most obvious answer is that it'll be Aegon because his life is precariously still in the balance because of his injuries. But also when you add the element of Aemond, you're like, ugh, maybe it's not going to go well for Aegon. But it's very possible that something could happen to Helena, something could happen to Aemond. I mean, all's fair in love and war, so you never know which way it could go. Yeah. So that is one of the theories I saw that is plausible, but I don't think it's what it's supposed to represent. The one that seems most likely to me is that the three crickets represent the three unbonded dragons, Vermithor, Silverwing, and Seasmoke. Because if you'll remember, I think it's at the very end of season 1 when Daemon goes down into the cave system of Dragonmont and he is singing that lullaby to Vermithor. And then in this episode, when they're doing the whole Sir Stefan Darkland thing, they're singing a lullaby to Seasmoke, is that they sing to the dragons. And so the crickets are singing. And the reason that one of them stopped singing is because Seasmoke now has a rider. So those are the two different points of analysis, which I thought both were really interesting for different reasons. I think the dragon thing is most likely. So I am very curious to see if/when Vermithor and Silverwing get a rider, if we're going to get another scene with Helena or the crickets where she's like, they've all stopped singing or something. I don't know. But I thought that was very interesting.
Ooh, okay.
No.
I like these theories.
Helena, watch. Helena, watch.
Yes, yeah. So then Alicent then asks her if she would want to light a candle for Aegon and, quote, all our lost souls. And then they head out and we transition. And now we are back to the city where all hell is just breaking loose. People are well aware that we have boats full of food that have touched shore. And we see Hugh, who's running around, and he asks the man where he got the food. And the man says, Rhaenyra ships that came ashore in the middle of the night with gifts from the queen. She thinks of us even now. And then after this, we just see crowds just running with bags of food. And Hugh punches a man for a bag of food. And it's just crazy and wild in the city at this point.
Also important to note that right before the people start running, Hugh runs into Cheese's dog and he's petting him. And
wait, that wasn't Cheese's dog. It was a different dog.
What? Are you sure?
Yeah, because this dog, the dog that he was petting, looked more like an Australian Shepherd. And Hugh and Cheese's dog is like a terrier. I'm like
99% sure.
Because I thought it was Cheese's dog too, but then I was like, unless the dog was just really dirty and it was like speckled in a way that was not. But I was like, that I don't think that's Cheese's dog.
This requires further research.
Yeah.
But why would they just do a random dog? It makes more sense to do Cheese's dog.
Let me Google this.
I thought it looked exactly like Cheese's dog. Hold on. We're gonna pause. We'll be right back. It has been revealed that Addison was correct. Lorraine said scrap what I said, but we're not going to scrap it. We're going to keep it in so everyone knows.
Hey,
that's right.
I don't know why that dog did not look like Cheese to me. I don't know what was going on. I guess my eyes were just, I don't know, but
it was definitely Cheese's dog.
Cheese's dog is still there. He's alive and well.
Okay. Anyway, it's in the details.
Yes. So after this, we briefly cut to Alicent and Helena. They were in the sept lighting the candles when they are instructed that they need to leave immediately. And as they are leaving out into the streets again, it gets very bad. They're running down the stairs. People start shouting at them and throwing food. Alicent gets hit in the face with a slimy fish as a man yells, "'Tis the queen of fishes." The guards, Alicent and Helena, continue rushing toward their carriage. Poor Helena gets hit in the face, and you can just see the panic and terror that starts to overtake her because she just stops and she goes freeze mode.
Mm-hmm.
One man approaches Alicent and he grabs her, and then the guard chops off his hand, despite Alicent commanding him to sheathe his sword. Not great.
Yeah.
This, of course, triggers the people and they start rushing in on the guards and surrounding them. Alicent and Helena do make it back to the carriage, but they are very panicked and not doing well. We also see that Alicent has been cut on her arm.
I think it's important too, once they make it to the wheelhouse and she's looking out the little holes in the carriage, you can hear the small folk yelling, "Long live Queen Rhaenyra! Long live Queen Rhaenyra!" I think that's very indicative of how the tides for the small folk have turned, and now they are very pro-Team Black.
After this, we have Larys, who's gone to visit Aegon in his room. Larys dismisses the maid from giving Aegon the drinking draft and reminds Aegon that it dulls his mind. Larys goes on to state that Aegon will never be whole again, even if he lives. And he says, "Your mind is all that remains to you. I do not say that gladly. I came screaming into the world, the bowels of one of Heron's great towers. My lungs were strong, but my foot was so twisted that my father named it sorcery. Accusing a member of our household of casting malign spells. People will pity you either behind your back when you're present, and they will stare at you, or turn away, and they will underestimate you. This will be your advantage." Aegon can still barely talk, but he says, no. He's a little bit in denial, I think, about his fate at this point. And then Larys says, "Your brother rules in your place now, which means that your life is in danger. But I think you know that." And Aegon reaches out to him and he says, "Help me."
You know, Obviously, Larys is a bad dude. He's very creepy. You're not supposed to like him. But you do, for a moment, I think, see some real vulnerability from Larys that he doesn't really show people. I think you can see that retelling the memories of his childhood and what it was like for him was very hard for him. He probably was bullied quite a bit, you can imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, his own father didn't want him. So
yeah.
I literally wrote, fuck, why am I feeling sympathetic for Larys right now? Because I was like,
I know.
You know, but obviously he's a bad dude. But I think that Larys sees himself in Aegon in this moment.
I think so too.
I think what he's trying to do is genuine. I think he wants to help Aegon, and he wants to
I think so too.
Help him navigate what his new existence is going to be.
Yeah, especially because that last line he says they will underestimate you and that this will be your advantage. I think that's pretty much been Aegon's entire existence. Nobody's really taken him that seriously.
Mhm.
Even Larys up to a point. But I do feel like Larys actually maybe likes Aegon now. Like, obviously, he used Aegon and Aegon was easy to manipulate. But despite that, like you said, he feels some connection to Aegon through the shared experience of being othered, I guess. So I do wonder what Larys is going to do. I would imagine he's not happy about what Aemond said to him either in the council meeting. And knowing Larys, I wouldn't put it past him to have already started cooking up some kind of schemes.
Yeah, something.
But for now, he does seem to be loyal to Aegon in a way. We are back at Harrenhal again briefly. Daemon has another vision with Viserys, who is crying over Aemma's death. And Viserys crying in Daemon's arm, and Daemon finally says to him, I'm sorry, I should have been there, but I'm here now. We obviously know that Daemon and Viserys' relationship was not great, but I feel like this was Daemon finally accepting that his behavior and actions caused a lot of damage to the relationship. So he's making peace with Viserys, as we talked about earlier. Daemon is then awoken by Simon Strong, who informs him that Lord Grover Tully is dead. Simon says young Oster Tully is now Lord Paramount of the Riverlands, and Daemon asks how he died. Simon is just like, well, he was ill. And then Simon says, our own healer, Alice Rivers, volunteered her renowned skills. She plied her craft, but there was not more to be done.
She totally killed him.
Oh my gosh.
She totally killed him.
I think she just didn't do as much as she could have. I think she probably could have done something to keep him from fully dying because he was like clearly on the decline, but I think she just chose not to and just like let him die.
Oh no, I think she sped it along. I think she...
Oh, really?
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's my
I thought it was
impression.
just a situation where she could have done more, but she intentionally did not, and that resulted in Tully's death.
That's possible, but I don't think so. Because why would she offer that in combination with the do nothing, the winds will shift in 3 days? Because she could have offered her service at any point in time. So it's like all of a sudden now she's offering her services and then he dies. I don't know. It's sus to me.
Oh, yeah.
It's totally sus. Alice.
Yeah. But obviously Daemon is very relieved to hear this because I think he's like, oh, okay, things are finally working out for me. This is the small, what's the word that I'm looking for?
Victory.
Yeah, I guess just a small victory that was needed to help him feel reinvigorated for his cause. So now we're starting to get to the final sequence of events. We are next on the beach in Driftmark, and Seasmoke has found Adam.
Ooh.
Adam is on the beach. He's presumably going to dig for some clams, and we see Seasmoke just start flying around. He's like scaring all the rest of the people off, but he starts chasing an Adam, and it's like reverse live action Pokemon. The people are not chasing the Pokemon are chasing the people. Adam starts running. He goes through some trees and some forest. Eventually he trips and Seasmoke corners him. They just start staring at each other. And it was interesting because it seems like Adam goes from being just purely panicked to maybe a little bit of this feeling of acceptance.
Well,
and then
I think the way it plays, it's like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. And he's like, well, if I'm going to face my end, I'm not going to go out, simpering and like crying, and if I'm gonna go, I'm gonna go standing strong.
Right. It seems like whatever his fate was going to be, he was just like, well, nothing I can do now. It also seems like Seasmoke sniffs at him, and I feel like he could smell the familiarity.
Oh, I think so too. Yeah.
People were like, oh, they think that he's Rhaenyra. And I was like, I don't know if it's that necessarily, but they can definitely tell that he has the right bloodline, right?
Absolutely.
So, and then, yay, hooray, great. They are now a bonded dragon and rider.
Well, not officially confirmed, but basically officially confirmed.
Yeah, heavily implied.
Yeah.
So plus then after
the scenes from the next episode. But
yes, yeah.
Hypothetically, it is a cliffhanger. Technically. Not hypothetically. Technically, it's a cliffhanger. Whatever. Anyways, I don't know why I'm hung up on that. Ignore me.
Rhaenyra and Mysaria are then conversing in Rhaenyra's room. This was Addison's favorite scene of the entire episode. Mysaria informs her that their plan was successful and it's been interpreted favorably by the small folk. And Rhaenyra looks distant and then says, I do not think I can win this war. She goes on to complain how Jace doubts her. And of course, Daemon is not helping anything. She has a speech where she's like, I wanted to be Daemon. Daemon wanted to be me. But I got what Daemon wanted and he resents me for it. Yada, yada. Mysaria continues providing support, but then she ends up sharing a pretty tragic personal story of child sexual and physical abuse from her own father. And that after that, she had sworn to never trust another person, but that she believes in Rhaenyra. She thinks she's steadfast and she believes she was meant to be queen. Rhaenyra goes to hug her, and then you think that this is just a nice friendly moment.
Yep.
Yeah, but then it turns into a secret feelings revealed plot twist that I did not see coming whatsoever.
Yeah, gee, nobody did. I wonder why that is.
Yeah, I will say I'm not against this relationship or anything, but it was just a really weird occurrence from a plot perspective, just because there was no teasing of it or anything in previous episodes. Maybe I'm just blind and I didn't see it, but I just really feel like there was no indication that
you're not blind.
They were going to turn lovers or something. So,
yes. Before I get on my soapbox about this scene, let me add one thing. So, when Mysaria reveals that she cannot bear children because of her trauma, it gives a lot of context for back in season 1, the conversation that Daemon and Mysaria have after the situation at Dragonstone. Yeah. Where she's very mad and she's like, you told them that I could bear your children. And he's like, yeah, we'll make one later. And she gets very upset and that's what prompts her to leave. And now with the context of her backstory, you can see why that was very triggering for her, because she cannot bear children because of the sexual trauma she experienced as a child or a young person, child, whatever. Either way, she was underage. And so that gives a little more context for that interaction. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But I have so many thoughts about this kiss, and I'm not happy, as you can tell. So first, let me just say this is not a commentary on how we feel about gay relationships. I just want to be very clear and explicit about this. We like inclusivity and diversity and representation. I feel that, Lorraine and I seem pretty accepting on the podcast, and I mean, there was a major character that was gay, Rhaenyra. Obviously, he's not in the show anymore, but I don't like representation in any form of media for the sake of representation. And that's what this feels like to me. In researching this scene later, I found out that the kiss itself was improvised and it was not scripted. And you can tell it's very jarring. It comes out of left field. I literally paused the show. Like, it took me out of the moment. I was like, wait, what? What's happening? Because it comes so far out of left field. I feel like this is especially frustrating because the way the show is designed, and specifically this season, and it is basically just an endless series of small scenes that are meant to foreshadow something much larger and more important, right? That's why we get so many cuts of Adam, Alan, Ulf, Hugh, Alice. There's all of these foreshadowing moments. Helena's visions, right? Yeah. That is like a core of this show. And this is not foreshadowed at all. There's nothing to indicate that's where the direction of where this relationship is going. Okay, so that is very frustrating to me because the show is a master at doing foreshadowing. So if that's where you're going to take it, why not foreshadow it so it feels organic to the plot? Which leads me to my next point. It felt very forced and inorganic to the plot and to the characters. At no point did I ever feel that's how their relationship was going to develop. Like, you see their friendship developing and they're sort of forming this trust based on their shared experiences. And that's great. I like that. I enjoy that. I just don't understand how we got from their beginning interaction 2 or 3 episodes ago where she's thinking about keeping her prisoner to like, now we're kissing. And then I also just don't understand how it serves the plot in any meaningful way. How is them having a relationship going to drive the plot? It obviously just happened, so maybe it's going to be revealed. I just don't see it. Next, I feel like this is a huge departure from Rhaenyra's character. In the first season, Rhaenyra quite literally says to Laenor, I like men. That's that whole conversation they have about, I prefer roast duck to goose, and we have our different preferences, and that's totally cool, right? I mean, she literally says that. So you can see why that would be confusing. And then, excusing all of that, let's just say ignore all that, and I'm fine with that. I think it's just done really poorly. Mysaria literally is like, my father raped me. I got pregnant with his kid. Then he tried to kill me. And Rhaenyra's response is, oh my gosh, we should probably kiss now. You know, it's horrible. Can you imagine telling a friend your trauma and then they try to kiss you?
Like make a move on you. It's a little, it just reads weird.
It's bizarre. I really like the hug. Like, literally when she does it, I'm like, oh my God. Like, I was like, oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah.
It's a very unqueenly thing for Rhaenyra to do, right? But that's part of her charm, is that she is such a kind and caring person, and she's not into the titles. Like, she doesn't care that she's queen and Mysaria is basically a nobody. She's like, oh, you were hurt and I feel sorry for you and I'm going to comfort you. For that split second, you're like, that's so nice. But then it turns into that and you're like, whoa, what?
Yeah.
And I just, it did not play well for me at all. And I don't get it. I don't like it. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. Again, had this been teased earlier in the plot, I think it would have been
much more palatable.
It would have just, and it would have just been like an easier transition to seeing that outcome for their characters and everything. But it really felt like Mysaria was meant to step in and become just like a female, just like another friend or another person who could support Rhaenyra with like female feminine energy in the same way that Rhaenys had been and everything like that. But then it kind of got turned into a sidelined romantic partnership that, again, we're not really sure how it contributes to the plot line, I guess. So,
I feel like it cheapens this nice feminine energy friendship that they're building, because now you've made it romantic, because that was something I greatly enjoyed, as seeing Rhaenys and Rhaenyra on the same side. And I'm like, yes, 2 powerful women supporting each other. But now you've added this romantic element and it changes that dynamic and it doesn't play the same way. And it sort of eliminates that women supporting women, because now it's like they're supporting each other because they have feelings for each other. I don't know. It just... I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I wasn't for it.
We'll see what they do with this relationship or how they explain it, I guess. I don't know. Maybe they won't explain anything at all. But...
very possible.
Anyways, to move on, they are interrupted by Sir Laurent, who states they've seen a dragon mounted, who also has a rider now. Rhaenyra rushes out on her dragon to go check it out, and they end with she's making her way to go investigate. And Jace, again, also has watched her fly out, and you can tell that he is still annoyed. He's
like, the fuck? Where are you going?
He's like, Mom, what the hell? Why are you leaving me behind?
Yes, exactly.
And that ends the episode. Of course, now we have our trial in the Fantasy Court of Law. So where do we currently stand?
So really actually did not have very many points. You know, I don't just try to make stuff up, but I really tried to think critically about it. Didn't come up with very much. So for Team Green, the only thing I have to contribute is that when Jason Lannister arrives in the Tooth, he says that he has 1,000 men plus 7 times that in archers and soldiers. And that is a huge ground force. And it almost feels insurmountable for the Blacks at this point. And I think Rhaenyra says that in this episode. Rhaenyra and Jace both say it, actually, that they're not going to be able to match the Greens' ground army. Also, super important, they have lions for battle. So clearly, that is another win for Team Green.
Yeah.
So that's actually really all I had for Team Green.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add either for them. It mostly felt, again, like I said at the beginning, this was heavily focused on Team Black and their progress in this episode. So,
yeah. And then for Team Black, we've talked about this pretty much every episode. The blockade is really fucking up King's Landing. Okay. This episode, I think, is really the peak of that. It's impacting the small folk. Secondly, Rhaenyra's ploy to send gifts of food was incredibly effective. The small folk are quite literally yelling, "Long live Queen Rhaenyra." And this is a huge shift from how they felt after the death of Prince Jaehaerys. Remember when the funeral scene and everything, they were like, "Oh, yeah, we're not Kinslayer, yes." And now they're like, "Long live Queen Rhaenyra." So really gunning her to completely shift the tides after that debacle. And I will say this is great for Team Black. However, the small folk can't really do anything super meaningful like without the Greens. But as I mentioned earlier, there's that quote about it's hard to fight a war abroad and keep peace at home, or something to that effect. Yes. And I think that's accurate. And we're going to see the Greens really start to feel the pressure each episode consecutively of dealing with the uprisings and the riots in King's Landing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would add, well, I guess this isn't officially confirmed yet, but obviously it's heavily implied. Adam bonding Seasmoke is going to be very impactful. Yeah. Assuming he bends the knee to Rhaenyra.
Yep. That's why I didn't add it, because, I mean, we know he bonds Seasmoke, but we don't know what he's going to do. It seems unlikely that he would go to Team Green. It would not shock me if he resists picking either side for a while. At some point, I think he will, but he doesn't strike me as the type to just see Rhaenyra and immediately bend the knee, because why would he? Now he has a dragon, you know?
He does seem to want Corlys's favor, or get into good favor with Corlys. And Corlys is now the hand to Rhaenyra. So maybe that is going to be a bigger sway point for him. I don't know. But again, it's not confirmed yet. So I guess we can't put it there officially speaking, but just to kind of keep on the back burner. And then I just had another small point, but I did think that it was good that they hear back from Pentos, like for Rhaena and her children, because this just confirms extra safety for Rhaenyra's future potential heirs.
Absolutely.
That's all. That's all I would say.
Same.
All right, let's move on to our favorite moments. What were your favorite moments from this episode?
Okay, I had so many, so I'm going to go through them super fast. I like when Alice is talking to Daemon about the crown, and she says, "It's not a prize to be won, but a burden to bear." I love when Lord Bartimos is bitching and Rhaenyra slaps him, and she says, "It is my fault, I think, that you have forgotten to fear me." I just love the way she delivers that. You know, and you can just tell she's had it. And I'm like, yeah, girl, let it out. I feel like the best way to instill fear perhaps is not to slap them. I'm like, maybe that's not going to achieve your end, but whatever. I still like that moment. I died when Aemon and Larys are talking, and Aemon says, "I'll make it your responsibility." And Larys is like, "Oh, thank you, Grace. I'd never considered it for myself." And Aemon's like, "No, not to serve his hand, you toad, to fetch him." Like, LOL so hard. I was dead. It was so good.
Yeah.
And then obviously the baby dragon. I mean, oh my God, this is so freaking cute.
The baby dragon.
I know. I just think about what Sunfire would have looked like as a baby dragon. So cute. Okay.
It's a little golden boy.
It's a literal golden boy. Yes. And then Allison and Helena's entire scene escaping from the Sept in the midst of the riot. That was just such a great scene. It's choreographed so well. It's really exciting. You feel the tension and you're just like, ah. It's just really good. And I really like, I forgot her name, the actress who plays Helena. Yeah, I forgot. Fia Sabin, yes. And just their chemistry together. That was one of my favorite scenes in this whole season, is the funeral scene, and it's them two together again. So it's just really, really cool. And then last but not least, obviously Seasmoke. Just everything with Seasmoke, the way he is.
I know.
Sir Darkland, the way he was with Adam. I just freaking love Seasmoke. So who doesn't?
I do too. That's really funny.
I honestly even had more, but I was like, Addison can't just say every single thing that happened in the episode.
Yeah.
So what were your favorite moments?
I agree with all the ones that you had, but I did have some different ones. So my first one was when Simon shushes Damon after he goes off accusing him of working against it. He's just always so calm, cool, collected, unbothered.
Yeah.
So that was funny. I also liked Alice's statement when she says, well, that's perhaps why your brother gave the crown to her. Perhaps those who strive for it are the least suited to wear it. So I just think that's pretty wise. I think it parallels a lot of people's storylines, like Rhaenyra being named as heir, and then even a little bit with like the Adam and Seasmoke situation. You know,
Yeah.
Adam wasn't looking to bond a dragon, but
Yeah, you're right.
alas, Seasmoke found him.
Yeah, good parallel.
And then I also liked when Ulf says that ain't right. King Viserys loved his feasts and his wine, but never while our small folk were without it. And again, for as much as Viserys was shit on, and obviously I had some things to say about Viserys in the first season too, about how he was overly peaceful and stuff, but really in retrospect, he did a great job of ruling. He did what he was supposed to do, which is to keep the realm peaceful, take care of the people, and I mean, what else can you really ask for, right? People just want stability, and I
they
think
want to be comfy. They want to live a Sir Simon Strong summer every day.
Yes, and Viserys did that. So
yeah,
I like that little callback to Viserys in this time. And yeah, those were my favorite moments. I tried to keep it short, so
I'm glad one of us did.
Thank you all so much for joining us for another episode of the Book Jump Fantasy Podcast. If you would like to keep up with us on other platforms, then all of our socials are linked below in the episode description. That is all that we have for you guys today. So stay nerdy, everyone, and we'll catch you next week for House of the Dragon Season 2, Episode 7. Bye!
Bye! Head out of this god's forsaken castle, but is stopped on his way out by Alice. I almost said Allison. People are running and fighting over the bounty of food Rhaenyra ships. Okay, I wrote it wrong and I tried to read over it.
So to get into the details of the actual, she goes on to complain how how Jace doubts her.
Before he can rally the liver. Okay, going out strong.